Thank you for tuning in to Ungentrified with Kent Johnson. Ungentrified takes an unfiltered view on pop culture, music, television and film, politics, current events, and topics central to the worldwide Black community. Ungentrified is a safe audio space for celebrating Black culture in its purest form. Thank you guys for tuning in to another episode of Ungentrified. I'm your host, Kent Johnson, and I can't wait to introduce you to the two people I have on today. But before we get to that, let's go ahead and get into some of the current events. Are you two ready to talk about what's been going on in the news?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's talk about it.
All right. So the first thing up on the news is Wale. Wale recently did a Ask Me Anything Twitter chat, and one of his fans posed the question, do you think your expressive passion for the music hurt or prevent you from being mentioned with the rest of your peers in your class? And he gave a really short response to that, blaming his woes on him being loud and outspoken, but also on the color of his skin. To quote him exactly, he says, it hurt me greatly, his not reaching the heights of his peers. Also, being a dark-skinned, not half-white rapper with direct descent from Africa did too, but let's not go there. And it kind of hit people in a weird space, because normally when you hear about colorism in hip-hop, it's not for the rappers, it's for maybe the women in the videos or maybe for the female rappers, but not for men. So people were like, is there really an issue with colorism for the rappers? And when I look at the peers in his class, you look at like a Kendrick Lamar or Migos, like these are folks who are fairly close in color spectra to him, and they've had no issues with that, or at least they haven't spoken out on that. I don't know. What's your take on that matter?
One thing I do want to say is that I don't think that Wale and Migos are necessarily peers just because of the timeline. So I think that it's different. So I'm definitely a fan of Wale. I would say Wale from about 5 years ago, more so than now. And a lot of the conversations that I've been hearing about Wale and success has actually cycled more so around his personality. As you know, he's been called cocky. He whines, quote unquote, a lot. He always talks about why isn't he number one? And I also kind of put that on the same level of how people talk about Joe Budden. How Joe Budden is always talking about the newer rappers and why isn't he getting as much love as others? And they look totally different. So I can't say 100% that I think it's related to colorism or his African heritage. More so that I think that the rap that people are listening to and jamming to now is very much different than when Wale was more popping in the streets. Right now, it is Migos. It is all these other rappers I'm not even going to try to name because I don't know their names for real. But I think it's a lot of that. It's the style that is different. But again, I think it does go back to his personality. And why? I don't really know. That's part of the rap game, is to be cocky, to be feeling yourself, to know that you spit bars. That's part of the appeal. But why that was different for Wale, I'm not really sure. But I did hear that a lot, that he was too cocky. They didn't like him. Also about his accent, because, he's from D.C. And people would say, they couldn't really understand him or his slang. Again, there's rappers from all over the United States who have their own swag, their own flavor, and that hasn't hurt them. So I don't know exactly what it is. I don't really think that it's necessarily colorism for him.
That is such a good point. I'm really glad you said all that. So I'm not really a fan of Wale. I have been to one of his concerts because I'm West African, so I try to support my other West Africans. But I'm actually not a fan of his music. But so I really haven't kept up with his career to really speak on his personality. So that was really interesting to hear that. I will say that it's so hard when it comes to things like racism and colorism, because there are these things are institutionalized, and so even if we see people who who overcome or like are the exceptions to the rule. That doesn't mean the rule doesn't exist, and that doesn't mean that like colorism might not be playing into why he feels like lighter skinned rappers or white rappers are getting more support than he is. And so I would never want to dismiss someone or like minimize someone's internal feelings about why they think they're not succeeding at the rate that they should be, because it could be personality, but it also could be like, it could be all of the stuff that he's talking about. But it sounds like from what I'm hearing from what you just shared, it's like there's a mixture probably of a lot of different things, and his personality probably plays into it. And he probably needs to do some self-reflection on that as well. But it very much might be colorism. It could be a lot of those different things. So yeah, I thought that was really an interesting take that he took, but we know that colorism affects other parts of our world, of our lives, and of the music industry. So to me, it's not far-fetched to think that it wouldn't also apply to hip-hop.
And I think now that you mentioned that, I'm also thinking like maybe I was thinking from the fan base. Now I'm wondering like maybe it's more so like the whole label thing, because you know he was like with the label, and I think now he's independent. I'm not sure.
Yeah, he's independent now.
He's independent now, yeah. So maybe he's talking about like the appeal in terms of like more of like the corporate aspect and who wants to play his music as opposed to who his listeners are. Because that's what I was thinking at first. But now that you mention that, like maybe it's not really the fans he's talking about. Maybe it's just like the people who back him up and who have the money in terms of like the power. And he was very, very specific. He said not half white. So who's he talking about?
Right.
Drake.
We all know who.
And there has always been, and like especially during like a couple years ago, it was Jake, Wale, and J. Cole. And Wale and J. Cole were doing their thing. They were like on each other's songs. They were always singing together. And it was kind of like them against Drake. And Drake was just like rising to the top. And Wale and J. Cole were like the conscious rappers, even though if you listen to their music, there's a lot of misogyny and a lot of other things going on in there. And even colorism, might add, happening in the music, but it was always like those two and Drake. And why weren't they all on the same level? So like it's really interesting, but who's to say?
I get not frustrated, but I'm always interested in what people deem as success for themselves. And when I look at Wale's career, I was like, you can still book venues, you can still drop music and have people, interested in what you're doing. The fact that you can have an ask me anything kind of moment on Twitter speaks volumes to, the kind of audience that you bring on. But you brought up a good point about maybe it was the machine and not everybody else. Maybe they were like, you know what, you really can't be emotional because that's not characteristic of someone of your skin tone. We can't find an angle for you. Like pretty isn't your thing. But then you look at like a J. Cole, who, as he became more introspective and more emotionally charged, he became he got his locks going and became more disheveled as far as appearance. So he wasn't necessarily a beacon of attraction as far as looks that maybe would have been what a label would have tried to push with emotion. But like I said, it boils down to what you feel internally is success. And there's this, I don't know if you're familiar with this theory, but the theory of 1,000 fans, and that's all you really need to make a living at whatever it is you do. And I'm sure he has more than that. Like, I'm sure he's not uncomfortable financially. Well, I don't know. I'm not doing his taxes or his accounting or anything, but you're in a space where people are still very much interested in what you have to say and don't care about your color. I've been to one of his concerts a few years ago too, and it was funny of him to say that because the majority of the audience was women. And I thought that was very interesting. So to hear him say that, it's based off of my skin tone and what that implies, and to know personally going to one of his concerts and seeing the crowd and a good chunk of the Wale fans that I know are women, it was just very peculiar. And like I said, just to see a man say that it was because of the color of my skin in hip hop, like it was very interesting, very unusual and unheard of take on color in hip hop. So the other thing in the news lately, and this is actually, it's an old interview, but a clip came back around the internet last week, and it's about DJ Khaled. And DJ Khaled was on the Breakfast Club and expressed that he doesn't express his love orally to his wife, and he refuses to. Although he expects that same that behavior that he wouldn't do from her,
Right.
he expects it of her. And his reasoning was that he's the king of the house and kings don't have to do things like that, but queens do. And it caused, of course, a firestorm on the internet. I don't know if you two have heard the clip, but let's go ahead and play that clip right now.
I believe a woman should praise the man, the king. If you holding it down for your woman, I feel like the woman should praise, and the man should praise the queen. But my way of praising is called how was dinner? You like the house you living in? You like all them clothes you getting? I'm taking care of your family. I'm taking care of my family. Putting in the work.
So you're saying you don't go down?
Nah, never.
All of that to say you don't go down? Come on.
You don't eat the box?
Come on,
Khaled.
Oh,
you don't eat no food?
Nah,
I thought that's what Hold You Down was about.
Nah, well, I don't. You know what I'm saying? Like,
never in life, or did you try it and didn't like the taste?
I don't do that. I don't.
Not even like for her birthday?
Nah, listen.
Christmas?
She gets. Jeez, I put in that work. My work is great. You know what I'm saying? Like, I do my thing.
So now if she told you she don't do that, is that okay?
It's not okay. Because you know what I'm saying?
I'm confused. So
you got to understand, I'm the Don. I'm the king. You know what I'm saying?
And she's
Everybody's
the queen.
the king of that house. Huh?
She's the queen.
Of course.
So
I don't do that.
Yeah.
It's not fair.
It's different rules for men. You know what I'm saying? You got to understand, like, we the king. You know what I'm saying? So, there's some things that y'all might not want to do or want to do. It got to get done. You know what I'm saying? I just can't do what you want me to do. I just can't.
Okay.
Yeah, so this sounds like we were listening to a 15-year-old boy talk about things. Like, I remember these conversations in middle school when none of us were doing anything, but we were all talking about what we wouldn't do. It elicited comments from everybody, like The Rock,
Right,
to,
I saw that.
I think Neil Diamond randomly even said something. Like, it was kind of a hilarious moment on Twitter, and people have looked at Khaled in a different way. Frankly, I wouldn't expect anything less. I'm not surprised at all. What's your take on this?
I think you hit it on the mark. Like, it sounded like a 15-year-old child. Like, I just was like, this is the kind of conversations I was listening to in middle school and high school. And so to hear it come out of a grown man, I was like, this is disappointing, but not surprising. It's like an old argument that we've heard over and over again, where people prioritize male sexuality and male sexual pleasure and not your partner also receiving sexual pleasure. And so this idea that, like, you are not willing to do something, but you expect someone else to do it, it's really sad. It's really sad. And I'm sure there's a lot of people who are honestly dealing with that reality where their partner doesn't care about their pleasure. And I'm someone who's like, if you shouldn't do anything sexually that you don't want to do. So I'm down with, like, people being in a relationship and being like, this isn't my thing. I don't like doing this and I don't expect it from you. But his reasons were so pathetic and sexist, really. And this idea that, like, I'm because, like, I bring home money. I'm like, this person is raising your child. This person is, like, also contributing things to the household that you all live in, and is contributing things to your sexual relationships. And so for you to just not feel like you should do something, who knows? Maybe she cool if she don't want it, but the way that he expressed it was like, even if she wanted it, I'm not doing it. Like, I refuse. And I just thought that was it was disappointing. Like, I feel like you're such a motivational speaker on, like, everything else. Like, why you ain't excited about this? Why you ain't trying to be number one? Be the best at this? Like, come on, like, you should be trying to, like, do all of it. Yes, I was disappointed but not surprised. I would say that.
Yeah, I definitely echo the same thing because, like, we grown, but I wasn't really concerned more so with the fact that he was like, oh, it's not happening. But again, it was what he was saying and also how he was saying. Like, first of all, his delivery was just like he was stammering over his words and he was really repetitive. It was literally like a a young person, like trying to gather their thoughts and share like their opinion on something. And it just seemed really odd and disrespectful. Like, this is something that I would feel embarrassed about if my partner was out here making these comments for the whole world to hear. And even if it were something like she's not into it, then that's still something that's private. But as we know, that's not the case. It was all of his own desire. Like, this is what I want. This is what I get. And not only that, but you can tell, like, all his roles seem like they go. She doesn't have much say-so, probably. But then I saw a video of him encouraging her while she was doing yoga or boxing or something, and she was going off on him. And I was like, maybe like she does have a lot more power than we're giving her credit for. But it was just really disappointing, though, just to kind of to hear the dialogue and the conversation he was having, and he was just like, nah, can't do that. I'm a man. Rules are different for men. Like, wow, rules are different in your household because that's how you want them to be. And you're really just like taking so much. It's just so negative. And so, like, it's definitely like you have the right to do whatever you want to do, what you don't want to do. And hopefully everything is enjoyable and pleasurable on both sides. But just the way that the message came across was just so demeaning, so disrespectful. And it just made me feel like, wow, I wonder how much of her voice is taking out of the relationship based on this one clip.
Yeah, I saw that same clip you were referring to when she was working out and she snapped, and I saw that clip before I heard the oral sex clip, and I said, oh, you know what? That clip from a couple of days ago makes complete sense now. But the issue I had, and you touched on it earlier, was that he was like, oh no, this is a part of her job, but so it made it seem like if she was a person who didn't like to do that, she didn't have a choice in the matter. But he was expressing his choice and being like, oh no, I absolutely don't do that. So that was the thing that kind of rubbed me off about it. And like you said, it's a very private thing, no matter how the cards lay in that. And it has to be frustrating to be in a relationship because we don't see much of her. But to be someone who may be private and then have someone who's the complete opposite of private, because you really don't have any kind of true level of privacy, because who knows when moments like this may pop up, and now all eyes are on you. People aren't even worried about him so much. They are now looking at you like, what do you have going on in your home? So that's a unnecessary burden on her end. I thought that article was a great segue into our conversation today. And I know you are probably wondering who I've been talking to for the last couple of minutes, and it's two people I've been talking to. So, ladies, go ahead and tell them who you are.
Hi, I'm Dalychia.
Hey, I'm Rafaella.
And we are the co-founders of Afrosexology.
And I reached out to these ladies because I was doing some research and I loved the work that they were doing, and I thought it was very important, especially in this kind of mental climate for our community. And I wanted to really talk about, like, how do we maintain our sexual health in times like this when other parts of us are being attacked, whether it's mentally or physically. And in some cases, how do we maintain ourselves and our personal reflections of sexual health? So I went to the experts of this space and really wanted to find out their thoughts and opinions on things. So let's jump right into it. Well, actually, let me step back. Before we dive into the conversation, ladies, one thing that I ask everybody that comes on the show is what's on their radar at the moment. It could be a new favorite song, a new Netflix binge, a new book, a new theory you've been researching, any kind of rabbit hole you've fallen into on the internet. What's on your radar right now? So, Dalychia, why don't you go first? Why don't you tell me what's on your radar?
So I am still, digging Janelle Monáe's Dirty Computer. I am loving the visuals. I'm loving what it represents. I'm soaking up all the articles that are praising it and critiquing it and talking about how it wasn't as inclusive of trans bodies and trans experiences. But I'm just really, really into that piece of work right now. it's good. I love when we create things that like center us and our sexuality and our bodies and our freedom. And so I'm loving how she like shared that with us right now.
I'm halfway through that album. I started listening to it a few days ago, and I thought it was dope. It sounded like her, but a freer her, and I thought that was very dope as well. And you could hear the new energy in this music that wasn't necessarily there before. So, Rafaella, what's on your radar right now?
Well, for all of you who are not aware, May is International Masturbation Month, along with Mental Health Awareness Month. So I've been using the last couple of days to share information about why exploring your sexuality through masturbation is important, and also how it can aid like relief towards like mental health stress and struggles that you may be experiencing, and also just sharing like little tips and resources that people can use to address any mental health issues. So I think it's really, really amazing, and I've been telling people that it's not a coincidence that they are falling on the same month, and that you can use them both interchangeably.
I hear that. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yes.
And maybe I should give a warning. If you have your children listening to this episode, this ain't the episode for them to listen to. At least not yet. Table it for a later time, but this is for grown folks this time. I just want to make sure I put that out there so I don't get any nasty emails about you didn't warn me, even though I think we kind of did with the DJ Khaled conversation. But on my radar right now is the new Leon Bridges album, and it was a kind of a late surprise for me. I heard people talking about it, and somebody I follow on Instagram played a clip of a song in his stories, and I was like, yo, that is dope. I thought it was an Anderson .Paak song, and Shazammed it, and come to find out it was a Leon Bridges song. So I checked out the album, and there's some jams on there. So I've been riding to that for the last couple of days. As far as what I'm gluing my eyes to, I'm in the middle of the second season of 3% on Netflix, which is a very dope show. And as listeners know here, I talk about what I'm watching incessantly, but this is my new dig. I finished Dear Black People, or Dear White People rather, season 2 in like a day. I was chilling in the house on Cinco de Mayo because I was not trying to deal with Drinkos on de Mayo. So I chilled in the house, ran through that. But 3% is really dope. It's a Brazilian show. It's kind of dystopian, kind of Hunger Gamesy, and basically there's this like super society that everyone in this town is trying to get to, and every year the people who turn 20 go and compete, but only 3% make it to the promised land, but nobody knows what's over there. So at the end of the first season, some of those characters make it there, and like the second season is kind of playing between this promised land and in the old city and how they deal with one another. So it's a really good show if you're interested in that kind of thing. But those are the things that are on my radar right now.
That's awesome. I've seen 3%.
Oh, you have?
Oh no, I was saying I like 3%. I just haven't seen the second season yet, but I watched the first season and it's really, really good.
Yeah, I agree. I was telling everyone about it when I first watched it, and you know how you try to like rally people around you? I think everybody does this when they discover something on Netflix and you just want somebody to talk to about it. So I was trying to rally folks to watch it, and I'm doing it again for season 2. So watch it and hit me up so we can talk about it. But
all right.
I'm glad that, Dalychia, that you brought up Janelle Monáe, because that is going to take us into our discussion for today. So one of the really dope things about Janelle Monáe's new album is that she has opened the door a little bit, giving us a little bit more of a peek into who she is. And in the kind of press run for this album, she matter-of-factly announced that she was pansexual. And I don't know, should I let you define that? I have a definition that I looked up, but Do you have a definition for pansexual before I tell mine? Do either one of you have one?
If you have the dictionary version, I would love to hear that.
All right. So pansexuality or omnisexuality is sexual, romantic, or emotional attraction towards people regardless of their sex or how they gender identify themselves. So I made a joke to a friend when they didn't know what the definition was, and I was basically like, well, you can walk into a room if you're pansexual. You can walk into a room and pan the room and see things that may be of attraction to you regardless of what's in the room. So, I
That's
think
cute. I like that.
you like that.
Yeah.
You can use it. You can use it. And that made it, very clear to her what pansexuality was. But so there's been topics and think pieces, of course, because we love to have think pieces about pansexuality and what that means for the Black community. But I think that's a great place to start for our conversation. So, Rafaella, what do you think about Janelle Monáe's recent decision to really claim her pansexuality? Because she's been very cards to the chest about what she does personally, but that was a big reveal for her. So what's your take on that?
Oh, I think it is absolutely amazing and freeing to witness, and also just so affirming for other people who may be experiencing the same thing. And then also putting a name to something. So often, if we're not in certain bubbles or groups or whatever, we don't really have a name to put to some of our experiences, some of our desires, some of our thoughts that we have. So to know that this huge icon was going through the same type of process, and they're, an adult. Usually we think, oh, we go through the struggle when we're going through puberty and through high school and college. But, our sexuality, defining it and exploring it is a lifelong journey that can be a struggle for some, that can be a beautiful process and journey for others, and can be a combination of both of those things at the same time. So I think it was really affirming in that sense. That was the biggest thing, is just to know that she is exploring that and she's putting a name to it, and she's letting people know loud and clear that this is what's going on. And now people can say, dang, like pansexuality, let me look that up. And then they have a definition to work off, and then they may identify and say, oh, you know what? I have too gone into a room and panned my options and thought, I can get down with all of this. So yeah, I think it's really amazing when people do have that experience and are bold enough to share that, because in the Black community, it can be very scary. There's so many things that can be really, really hard lines to draw in terms of what is accepted, what you can explore, what can be discussed, and to just kind of put all of that to the side and say, I'm here, I'm loud, and this is what it is. You're going to accept me. You may even identify with me. I think it was extremely beautiful and powerful. So I'm glad that it exists, also in the form of all the visuals that she has been putting out there with her songs and all her music videos and everything have been so powerful, been so dope, so creative. And it's just like in your face. Like, if you were confused before, let me show you and tell you that this is what is going on. So yeah. I think it's definitely opening up a lot of space and conversation, because like here we are now having a conversation about it. There are so many think pieces, so many responses on YouTube. If you watch those type of things where people are not only like crying and feeling the love and the affirmation to know that, oh my God, someone who looks like me, someone else who identifies as that alternative Black girl, awkward Black girl, had this experience, because we do know that some of those people miss out on a lot of things in our society because they're pushed aside from the quote unquote normal people, the cool people, because they like nerdy stuff, geeky stuff, Star Trek, Star Wars, all those types of things where it's not cool to be like that if you're Black. So I think it just really pulls in a lot of experiences and identities within the Black community that usually don't have any light shine onto them.
And I like it, like how you said, like she not only announced it, but she gave you like a whole visual audio syllabus to go along with it. Like, and I think that's the first time we've really seen that. Like, we've had artists like Frank Ocean, speak on his sexuality and give music to it, but this was the first time someone was like, oh yeah, here it is, and I'm going to give you, all of these pieces of media to go along with it to really give you an understanding of what I define pansexuality for myself as, and what other people may be feeling about that. Like it gave people GIFs to put in their text messages. It gave them, videos to post and be like, this is me, or this is exactly how I feel. It gave people comparison moments that they may not have had before.
Exactly.
Dalychia, you can take this one on too. So why do you think that, or why does it appear that the Black community is rarely receptive to things like gender identity or the idea of a sexual spectrum? Why do you think it comes off that way?
Yeah, I think Rafaella mentioned it a bit in her beautiful praise of Janelle Monáe. You said that, girl. That was everything. But I think for so long we've been told that like the Black existence, the Black body, our Black life is limited to this particular box, and that staying within this box meant some sense of survival, some sense of safety. And now you have people who are trying to like live outside the box, expand the box, say we don't need the box, we can get out of it. And it feels scary. I think it feels scary to a lot of people because we've just felt confined for so long and just limited. And so when you've been in that existence, like freedom sometimes can kind of feel really like a black hole. Like you don't know, where does it begin, where does it end? Like I've defined my existence by these like limited lines, like male is this, female is this, like heterosexual is this, whatever. And now when you're like saying like it can be whatever you want, you can totally redefine your femininity, your masculinity. You can redefine who you choose to love, how you choose to express yourself. For people who don't get to see that often and get to see that and see it done safely and well and praise, it can feel really scary. So I think a lot of times it's rooted in fear. And I think religion plays a huge part in what we believe is as a community we've been told is right and wrong. But I think what we're seeing is a newer generation of people who are really into just being unapologetically themselves, being unapologetically Black, queer, women, like whatever, just like saying like I'm here, I'm proud, and I want to be able to define my existence for myself, and I don't want to have to stay within the boxes that we've had to stay in for however many years. And so I think it's beautiful that we're expanding and trying new things, but also relating when I'm hearing people who are talking about all of these changes, a lot of times I'm hearing fear in their voice that they don't really know what this means for the future. They don't really know how to operate in this new paradigm. And it feels like really intimidating and scary because it's the unknown.
Yeah. In digging and researching for our discussion, there was a theory I read that a lot of how we as a whole approaches sexuality is kind of rooted in the quote unquote twice as good mentality. And I've talked about this before about how I think that the twice as good thing helps and hurts us at the same time. And this would be one of those instances where it hurts us, where in trying to be this great example of Blackness, whatever that means, we don't get to be ourselves. And we compare that to how Black bodies have been over sexualized throughout time, even as we're speaking, it's going on. And is that fear impacting us, even when we do get a chance to be in whatever sexual safe space that is that fear running us and defining us? What's your take on that, Rafaella?
I think that it is definitely part of the way that we have had to survive in the United States. There's so many things that we just simply were not able to do without facing any type of repercussions, violence. So in order to keep ourselves alive, we had to be very, very cautious, very aware of how we were presenting, how we were taking up space. And even partly to this day, it's still happening. I mean, hell, I just saw an article about these women who had the police calling them because they were leaving an Airbnb, and the neighbors thought that they didn't belong there, thought they were robbing the place, and called the police. So there are so many situations that we see over and over again in the news where Black people are not supposed to be somewhere, doing anything, breathing, laughing, joking, playing music, wearing a hoodie, getting food, whatever the case is, and people call the police on us. And because of those things, I think is why we have that whole respectability politics, the whole like you have to be twice as good, work twice as hard, and to be half as good. And that is the reason why that is to keep us safe and to make sure that we're not intimidating, that we're not making anyone feel like they're inferior to us. And it's just been a way that we've been taught to survive, to keep ourselves safe, to not make as much noise. But, you know, as things, as times have changed, we are doing the opposite. We're trying to do the opposite. We're just trying to live like everyone else has been living successfully for so long. And we're still facing the consequences and the challenges that we've been experiencing for decades. So I really think that's what it boils down to, is like, don't take up a lot of space. You have to pull your pants up. You have to look a certain way. What is presentable? What does professional really mean? You know, and sometimes we check ourselves, right? Like, have you ever been in a space and you see like some people come in and they're loud and you're like, oh no, wait, stop, don't be so loud, Black, because all the white people are going to look at you and then they're going to look at me and we're not together. But you know what I'm saying? Like, that's even a mindset I had to make sure I had to check on myself.
Yeah, it's a hard
Exactly.
kind of, it's a gut response that you have, and you're kind of like fighting yourself when you say it. And I think it's always, it's not necessarily the gut check that you have, it's what you do after you have it. Where if you keep going with whatever
Right.
that thought was, then you got some work to do. But if you're like, you know what, I can't believe I'm thinking that way, then like you're getting to a space of comfort of yourself. But yeah, it's still moments where I'm like, man, why are we doing this? Like, we don't, no, come on, let's not today.
And it is hard because we've been taught to be quiet for so long. Like, we can't go in the store, we can't touch anything. Don't act like you want to ask me to buy anything. You know, don't embarrass me when we get in the store. All these type of messages that we receive over and over again to protect ourselves and not to bring attention to ourselves, and to try to like keep us out of trouble, was what we did for our livelihood, our survivalhood. But now, you know, it's 2018 and we're still doing the same thing, and we think that it's going to help us, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how educated you are, where your suit came from. At the end of the day, if they want to stop you and check you or call the police on you, they're going to do just that. And you're going to have to sit there and wait for them to finish, or hope, you know, unfortunately, a lot of us are hoping that it doesn't end in a casualty. But I mean, that's where it comes from. It's like clear cut as day. That's just the trajectory of Black people in the United States.
I think you're spot on. I think it's a self-application of respectability politics. Like we get mad, well, most of us. And I can't even generalize that, but at least the people I hang out with, in most cases, get mad when you know, respectability politics are put upon us, but then we turn around and do the same thing to ourselves and to other people in our community, and to our detriment, because you know the same thoughts that we think that, you know, white people may be having of us, or any other culture may be having of us, we're having those of ourselves. But we put that, you know, that twice, that multiplier onto whatever ill thoughts we're having towards our people, and make it even worse. And then, like I said, we're turning that same negative energy inward, and it's hurting us. So you know, the work that you two have done is work to kind of break down these kind of walls. So Dalychia, can you tell us about like what you both are doing with like your sexual liberation course? How did that idea come to be, and how does that work in this day and age?
Yeah, so I mean, Afrosexology really started because Rafael and I were both interested in Black sexuality and seeing our communities just have more conversations. And like, so there's a lot of messages that are around what we shouldn't be doing, like don't get pregnant, don't come home with no baby, don't be out here having no sex to everyone. Like, there's all these like we can't explore and try sexuality, and all we get told are the consequences that come with it. But there's also a lot of silence in our community. There's a lot of silence around like masturbation, just around like exploring sex, sexual fantasies. And so we really just wanted to like kind of break and challenge that silence with these conversations. And for us, we just feel like we are focused on seeing Black people healthier, happier, empowered, liberated. And one of the things that we feel like we lost when we were first brought to this country as slaves is the right to our bodies and agency over our bodies. So how do we, in our work, reclaim our bodies? And part of that is really having a say in what our bodies experience when it comes to like pleasure. And a lot of times we don't have those conversations. A lot of us are having mediocre or bad and unhealthy sex. And because of all of the stuff that we're carrying around on the day-to-day, just trying to navigate the world as a Black person in a Black body in this country, it's really important that, like, at the end of the day or at the beginning of your day, that you know that you do have some power and agency over your body and that you can bring pleasure and joy to your body. And so for us, we always talk about how we believe that reclaiming our bodies is the first step to even thinking about having political, economic, and social agency. Because if you don't even have agency over your own body, like, how are we envisioning what that looks like when it comes to these other realms of our life as we speak about liberation? And so we think it's really important to create spaces for Black people online and in person to have these conversations and to explore and to learn from one another, to share our experiences, to affirm one another, to celebrate our sexuality, and to really define it for ourselves. I think, like what you and Rafaella were just saying earlier, for so long we've been given messages around Black sexuality. We've been told that we're hypersexual, and even in respectability politics, we were just reacting to that. We were saying, like, oh, you think we're hypersexual? We're going to be so sexual pure, and we're going to like control our sexuality because you think we're this like beast out here. And so, and all of that, we were still just reacting to what white people said we were. And so we're sitting here like, if we get the freedom to define what it means to have Black sexuality, what do we want it to look like? How free and open do we want it to be? How much pleasure do we want it to have? And so we're just trying to have those conversations so that we can all be on that journey. And we're not saying that we have the answers, but we're creating the space for us to have that conversation in community. And it's been really fun. I mean, I think we were both skeptical at first, as like if Black people are going to come and talk to us about this. And what we have found is that like people really want to have these conversations. People have so much internalized shame and hurt around their sexuality. People have a lack of knowledge because no one is informing us about like the healthy side of sex. And people just really want a space where they can feel free to like talk about the things that they feel like that they've been told to feel ashamed about. And so it's been a real joy to just create space and community for us to talk about the things that we desire for our bodies and to work through a lot of the anti-Black messages that we've received about our sexuality, about us being unlovable, about us not being beautiful, and just like unpack all those messages and then to fill it up with really affirming and loving messages that let us know that Black sexuality deserves to be seen in a healthy light, deserves to be represented, deserves to be celebrated, that we are lovable, that we can affirm one another and love our own Black self and love our Black community and love our other Black people, and just really, just be in a space where we can feel good and not have to only come together when we're talking about trauma and not have to only come together when we're thinking about a crisis or harm around our sexuality, but also the things that make us feel good.
Yeah, I'm glad that you touched on the idea of kind of self-reflection and acknowledging your beauty and feeling that. In 2013, Essence magazine printed an article, and in that they stated that they did a study, but negative imagery of Black women appears twice as often as positive depictions of Black women. Do you think, and I'll put this on both of you, Rafaella, you can lead with your answer. Do you feel like you were impacted by that at one point, by these negative imageries? And what was the turning point for you? Like, how did you decide that, you know what, I can't let that impact how I view me? What was the moment for you?
You know, but that's a really deep question. You know what? I can't really say for sure because I think that a lot of the women that I compared myself to, I've never thought about this before in terms of like my sexuality as opposed to like how Black women behave. So maybe like personality and characteristic traits in terms of like those negative images because there's so much in there about like the unwed Black woman, the Black woman who has like multiple children and multiple fathers of those children, the abused Black woman, the addicted Black woman. So like those, there are some like things related to sexual characteristic traits. That's not something I necessarily identified with, as opposed to wanting to make sure that I wasn't seen in the other way. So I was just kind of tying back in the respectability politics type of thing. But then also knowing like the communities I grew up in. I didn't really have to go to magazines, movies or anything, because unfortunately, like where I grew up, there were some people who lived in the neighborhood who were the spitting image of that thing, who were going through life struggles, who were dealing with addiction and violence and trauma. And so I would say more so like that's more where the depiction came from, with just my day-to-day interactions with people. How that impacted me, I mean, definitely felt crappy. And I don't know, I think I already said hell, but yeah, I mean, it doesn't feel good to walk in a neighborhood, to walk in a community and see people begging, see people literally walking by them like they don't exist. To know that some of your friends' parents aren't coming home, you haven't seen them in days, weeks. To know that, you know, they may be in a household with severely lacking love. I mean, and that's in part why I do the work that I do now. In addition to the sexuality education, I am a mental health clinician as well, and all of my experiences have made me take the career path that I have taken. And yeah, I mean, this, like Dalychia was kind of talking about, like we've had so many things in our community related to just our struggles to survive and to make it and then to move to thriving, that at some point you're like, is it even appropriate to talk about sexuality, to talk about how to give better head, to talk about exploring toys that people may not be able to afford, you know? But then when you link that back into power of oneself, liberation over myself, letting go of some of the things that may have happened to me or to you or whatever the case may be, then you start to realize why it is a timely thing, why it's not one or the other, but both and. When you're talking about economic liberation, when you're talking about sexual liberation, all of them things, because it was so intentionally separated and our sexual identities were stripped for us and we were put into another category in terms of like all these different identities as being hypersexual, as being sexless. I mean, I don't know, I'm kind of just talking in circles, but I think like that's really what comes back to me. So to answer your question, I don't know.
Yeah, you did.
But,
you did.
Okay. I'm making sure, like, I'm just talking, but I don't know. It's just so many, like, now when I'm listening to so many different emotions are coming up that I never really thought about in that sense. But yeah, I mean, it is sad, you know. It's a lot of work to be done, and there's so many different people doing amazing work that ranges from different fields in terms of health and wellness. But yeah, we have a long way to go, and we're getting there. And a lot of people do want to get this message. They do see the value in the work. They do see why mental health is important, why sexual health and autonomy and agency is critical right now. So, I mean, we have nowhere to go but up, unless all these politicians keep trying to strip all our rights and block us from everything that we're trying to do. And they're doing that very well, unfortunately. Right. But we have to keep fighting. You know, we have to keep sending these messages out there.
And on that note, we're going to take a brief break, but we'll be right back to wrap up this episode of Ungentrified after a word from one of our sponsors. This episode of Ungentrified is brought to you by Black and Abroad. Black and Abroad is an online travel community dedicated to inspiring and celebrating the experiences of Black travelers and expats. Interested in traveling with a handpicked group of individuals just like you? Check out Black and Abroad's curated travel experiences in destinations worldwide. Upcoming trips include Cartagena in June and Johannesburg in December for Afropunk. You can find out more about Black and Abroad and its upcoming journeys by visiting weareblackandabroad.com. You brought up a good point about how we tend to separate mental health and sexual health like they're mutually exclusive, and they're not at all. And I think the way our community tends to shut out mental health, in doing so, they have shut out the idea or the concept that sexual health may be a thing. Like to to us, a lot of times it seems like sexual health is, look, as long as I don't contract nothing, I'm good. And it's it's so much
Mhm.
more than that. Um, to
Mhm.
how these things play into brain function, how we move through a day, how stress impacts us. These are all very connected things, but we
Yeah.
compartmentalize them, and in doing so, don't give them the appreciation that they need to work well with one another. Uh,
Mhm.
Dalychia, I'll turn back to you.
Yeah. I will share like a bit about my personal connection to this, but I wanted to say that like I loved how you were saying that like sexual health is not just the absence of STIs. And I think it's really important that we learn that like sexual health is not just the absence of pain, but also the presence of pleasure. And I think the same thing when we talk about Black liberation, it's not just the absence of oppression, but it's also the presence of like freedom, of love, of joy, of these things. And so many times when we ask people, what do you want when it comes to your body, and people are like, well, I don't want STIs and I don't want to be raped, and I'm like, that should be like the foundation basis. But what do you want? Like, what gets you up in the morning? Like, what are your fantasies? And the same thing when we talk about Black liberation, it's like, well, I don't want to be shot by cops, and I don't want to, I'm like, that should be the foundation. Like, yes, that's what we're fighting for, but like what also like what is beyond that? Like, what is the joy that we're working towards? So I think it's really important for us to start moving from a framework of just like the absence of pain, even though we need to address all of the pain that we're currently dealing with and need to get that away from here, but also start making sure that we're thinking about what do we want to replace it with? Like, what is the presence that we want here when we get rid of all that stuff? But for me, I was honestly like really, really growing up, I was really afraid of my body. I was really afraid of myself. Like, I had gotten all of these, I grew up in a really Christian household. I had gotten all these messages about like sex being bad and that like all these negative consequences were going to happen to you when you have sex. Like, I think at one point I was told by my mom that I'm going to have an abortion, that I'm going to get an STI, and then I'm going to become hooked on drugs and alcohol. And I was just like, I don't even know how that got in there. So I was just like really afraid of exploring my sexuality. But I was in relationships and not having pleasurable, necessarily like exciting sexual experiences. I mean, like they weren't necessarily unhealthy, but I didn't have a voice. I wasn't able to like advocate for what I wanted. I didn't feel comfortable. I was the girl who wasn't comfortable asking for oral sex. So if I ended up with a partner who was like, I want to do it, and was waiting for me to ask for it, it was never going to happen because I just did not have any empowered erotic voice. And it wasn't until like I was out of my parents' house and in college that I really had to tell myself like, there's so much fear and negative like internalized messages here that I have to take a break. And I was like intentionally off of relationships for about 2 years and like did a lot of work. That was when I really like set my masturbation game up and really did a lot of work around self-love and just like learning about myself and working through that, all of these negative messages that I had internalized, and just got really, really serious about learning myself and what I like and what I don't like and what I'm going to put up with and what I'm not going to put up with, and finding my erotic voice and being comfortable walking away from like hookups that were not pleasurable, or the person wasn't interested in like hearing what I wanted in that experience, which was really empowering for me and really helped me to just feel like I'm good. I can do this. And so that for me like just started this like lifelong journey that I've been on ever since. And like I feel like every year I'm just learning so much more about my body, myself, and my power. It's been really inspirational and life changing how much I've discovered that my power was connected to me having so much voice and agency over my body. It was one of those things that I didn't even know I didn't have until I started exploring it. Then I was like, I've been missing this for like all of these years. So I think it's, for me, I'm so grateful for Issa Rae and Insecure, for Black Panther, for Blackish, for all of these shows that are putting out different images of Black experience, Black family, Black love, Black sexuality. And even if it's messy, because the thing that I love about Insecure is the thing that frustrates me. Everybody's a hot mess. But even if it's messy, it's us. It's our reflection of like us working through our sexuality and our issues and our relationships. And we deserve to create those visuals for ourselves and to reflect that back at us. And that's a really intentional thing. So to answer your question, I think consuming a lot of these like more positive images about Black experiences by Black people is really, really affirming. I know that we are really intentional about our social media and our Instagram about posting images of Black people being sexual and being in love and being just emotional and just like in relationship and community and love with themselves, because we don't get those images all the time. We don't get that reflected back at us. We are given anti-Black messages all day long, whether it's the media, whether it's like the violence that we're experiencing or watching other Black people experience throughout this country, whether it's through the daily acts of racism that we have to navigate. Like it's a lot that our body is constantly taking on. And so to counter those messages, I think it's even more pivotal to surround yourself in Black love. Like once you realize that this stuff is all intentional, that this system was built on us believing and feeling like we're inferior, and that giving us anti-Black messages is an intentional way to keep us in that space, the antidote is all of this like pro-Black love and having these messages like surrounding you. So what are the affirmations that you can give yourself? How are you affirming the other Black people around you? What are you doing in your life that brings you pleasure, and how can you do more of that? Like we're always advocating for people to really tune into their senses and to figure out what are the smells that they like, what are the different tastes and the different sounds, and how can you bring that stuff into your day-to-day, whether that's taking a specific scent with you to work. I'm really into essential oils, and so whether that's like just having essential oils around your house and like lighting that and smelling that throughout the day, whether it's playing music, but making sure that you can bring as much pleasure around you as possible, because people are going to constantly try to take away your Black joy. So you got to be like ready to really affirm yourself. What is your plan when someone tries to shame you, like sexually, or does something that's anti-Black towards you? What's your plan to really affirm that you are lovable, that you are loved, that you deserve to be here, that you deserve to take up as much space as possible? How do you do that for other people? And just really like be in community. I think community is such a pivotal thing. Like who can you go to rant to vent to just say, like, I need a hug right now. I just need to like go get a drink. I just need to go outside for a walk. Like who's your circle? And really making sure that you have a tribe that supports you and fills you up when this world is constantly trying to empty you and take these things away from you.
No, you hit it right on the head. I think this is one of those few times where I'm thankful for the internet, because it provides spaces like that. I couldn't imagine what it would feel like to have all of these things that happen to us as a community as a whole, and not have these outlets that we have now to, express to someone else. It doesn't have to be someone who's in the room with you. It could be someone across the country who, may be thinking the same thing, and has given people these comfort zones that didn't exist 10 and 15 years ago, and open up new doors of conversation that may not have been there before. So yeah, it frustrates me because I don't remember feeling like this, 10 years ago. And I'm like, what was it going on? Was I just caught up in something else? Or is it just now that, these things are happening in rapid succession? Or is it the 24-hour news cycle? But this is a stress that would happen, in the past, but now it just feels like it's just there. It's just a part of the day. We expect it coming. We just know something else is about to happen. We don't see an end in sight for it, and that takes a toll on you, and further than we like to admit sometimes. And I wonder, like, how do we maintain ourselves in these times? Like, we see ourselves constantly being attacked on, television and newspaper. It's just a constant state of attack on us, and because our mental capacities and our sexual capacities are so very much connected, how do we survive sexually in times like this? How do we maintain our best sexual energy or sexual health? How do we do that in this time? Dalychia, I'll refer to you.
Yeah, so I think this is why it's important to center pleasure, because even though it might seem like frivolous or like just icing on the cake, it's actually really essential to our well-being. And one thing that I learned when I was first becoming really aware of the world around me and all of these like anti-Black experiences and messages that I was receiving, I was really angry, and I was internalizing so much of what I was seeing and experiencing. I did not have an outlet for it, and I realized that while our anger is very valid, and like I was about to curse,
Oh no,
our
please.
anger is
You,
very
you can.
valid.
There's no limit on it. You can speak freely.
We already told them no kids.
Right.
We are dealing with so much fucked up shit. Like, yes, we are like, be angry. Like, there's moments when I'm like, I am that angry Black girl today. I'm not. But what I was also recognizing was that it's so hard to internalize all that anger and to consume all that anger, and for it to now bleed into other aspects of your life. And so I found myself yelling at my partner. I found myself being unhappy all throughout my day. I found myself not being able to find joy in the things that I used to find pleasurable, which is completely natural when everything's going around. But I was like, I can't stay in this state, because whether they're actually killing us on the street, or they're killing us mentally by giving us all these messages, like by me sitting in this state of constant anger, I felt like I was letting them win. Like I was self-destructing at a certain level. And so for me, like, this is like the realest I'm about to use for real. Like for me, like making sure that I was masturbating every day was me making sure that my body was being told that you deserve to feel more than just anger and pain and hurt. You deserve to feel pleasure. You deserve to feel love. You deserve to feel all these good feelings that get released when you have an orgasm. And it was the same thing as like meditating every day, or like doing daily affirmations, like something that just affirms that you deserve to be here. And so for me, that was masturbating, and was making sure that I had an orgasm every day, especially in moments when it was tense, because your muscles hold all of that negative energy, and you feel tense. You start walking different, and it is so hard, because like my orgasm doesn't mean that it's stopping the violence that's out there, but at least it gives me a little bit more of myself back that they're constantly trying to take away from me. And so that's why for us we advocate pleasure, and that's why like it's really important for me and the person that I'm partnered with, that we like make sure that even though out there like we're getting all this bullshit, that in our space that we've created for each other, that we are affirming and loving each other's Blackness, that we're making sure that we are supporting each other in whatever way that we can, because we don't have a lot of people who are giving us that positive energy out there to counter all the stuff we're taking in. So that's what I do. And it's hard, because sometimes it just feels like it's not doing anything to just be like in my pleasure, but
it really
will
is,
say
though.
that like
It is. You're
yeah,
saving the part of the Black community that you can. No, you're welcome. You're saving the part of the Black community that you can in the immediate, and that's yourself. So there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
You know.
And I like protesting is important. All of these think pieces are important. All of the stuff that we're producing to counter the anti-Black messages that we're getting is really important. But I'm also loving how we're resisting through joy. And like Black Panther was like such a beautiful moment, because we got to see ourselves as like these godly figures and resist by laughing and having a good time, which is what, Black people have always done. It's what Black Twitter offers us, like laughter out of the fact that someone like Kanye West wants to go around and say slavery was a choice. And we can sit up here and joke about it, because like, what the hell, And so finding ways to resist that also affirm our humanity and like all of our emotions is really, really important to me. So even like creating spaces where we're centering Black pleasure feels really like a form of resistance to me, because they only want us to feel these negative emotions. And so us saying like, you know what, all this is going on and we're going to go out and twerk because that's what we want to do, it feels to me like we're resisting in a way that's centering our existence and the fact that we deserve to be here and we're going to stay here. And even though you're trying to kill us all around us, here we are laughing and smiling and being in joy, being in community and affirming that like we are dope as fuck. And I think we deserve to do that as much as possible.
Yeah, I love how earlier on when you were speaking about masturbation, I feel like, I mean, you basically said it, like masturbation is affirmation. Like it's okay if that is the affirmation you give yourself in the morning, is a little release. There's nothing wrong with that. And I'm thinking, I have my list of like t-shirt logos. I think masturbation is affirmation might be added to that list.
All right.
So we've been talking about Black sexuality and going through, what that means. Rafaella, do you think, should we isolate Black sexuality from sexuality as a whole? Are we doing a disservice to us by separating Black sexuality and giving it its own space in that conversation? Are we kind of adding to the idea that it's something that's exotic or foreign or worthy of fetishization? I felt like I said that right. I don't know. I'm sure I'll get I'll get canceled if I said it wrong. But are we going about it the wrong way by making Black sexuality a thing and not having it just be sexuality?
Well, Black sexuality is already a thing, and I think that as we've been talking this entire time, we've kind of highlighted a few bits and pieces of why that is, and I don't think it's a problem. I think that whoever has the problem with it is the one that needs to address that, right? We are all sexual beings, and there's something very, very specific as to why we are in this moment of sexual liberation, of having these conversations, because when you look out there for years, when you look at Cosmo, Men's Health, and all these other publishing companies who talk about like having fun doing sex and what should you do to please your partner better, those are all written for and by white folks. Black people were left out of their conversations because our conversations were about prevention, was about how to prevent HIV, and these are the STI rates, and these are the amount of people who are dying because of these things. These are what people are experiencing in terms of rape and abuse. That's what our conversations have been about. We are just now getting to the point of talking about the quote-unquote fun stuff, right? Making ourselves feel good, having the power and autonomy to do that. And I think it's so important to highlight that, because there is so much power that has been intentionally taken away from us. And that if we start to talk more about pleasure in our lives completely, then we are also teaching people how to recognize when pleasure is absent, right? In all aspects. So if you are in a situation that makes you feel comfortable with another person, if you know how to say what you want to a person, what you don't want in the bedroom, right? Or even before that, if you're talking to your little child about autonomy, about what is appropriate, what's not appropriate, you don't have to kiss that aunt or uncle or cousin, whoever, if you don't want to, right? You don't have to hug them if you don't want to. You're teaching them that their voice matters, that they can come to you and tell you when they're not comfortable. But when we take that right away from them, we're teaching them that they have to ignore those feelings that they have when someone makes them feel unsure, right? When they feel like they may not be safe. But we've told them like, oh no, you have to do that because that's what I said, or you're being rude, you're being impolite. So I think that's why it's so important, because when we get older, we are still in those same situations. We're just coming out of, right now, a lot of people saying that they've been harassed sexually, physically by people, been raped and assaulted. And there's been a lot of shaming, because the conversation has sometimes been like, well, if you didn't like it, why didn't you leave? Or why didn't you fight? But again, we've been taught to ignore those feelings for so long. So some people do freeze. And we do know that that's a thing, like that fight or flight or that freeze reaction that we may have. Mm-hmm. And people seem to completely understand it when it involves like a fire, or if you're being mugged. But for some strange reason, when it involves sexual assault, it goes out the window. You forget that it's a thing.
Yeah, that always drove me crazy, because I was like, every single person in this world has been in a situation where they were somewhere they didn't want to be and felt like they didn't have a choice. Whether or not they did wasn't even in question, but they personally
Mm-hmm.
felt like they didn't have a choice. They felt like there was some barrier to them getting out of or whatever it was. So yeah, it always trips me out when people kind of throw that as the reasoning why, and it's like, really? Because you've never been in that situation, and it, like I said, it's not limited to sex, but people seem to lose their common sense when it comes to those things.
Exactly. I mean, and also, we are all in a society that puts the desires and expectations of men before everyone else, particularly white men. So that's another reason why it's ignored, right? Because that's not their experience. It's not important, and it's not really relatable. But yeah, so I mean, in short, that's why it's important, because it's our time. It's our time to have these conversations about pleasure, about autonomy, about our right, our birthright, about exploring our sexuality and what that means, about demanding pleasure from other people, walking away from situations that do not feel good to us, and how we can teach other people to do the same thing in terms of listening to their body.
Thank you for putting that out there. I agree with you wholeheartedly. So, ladies, tell me, as you do this great work and as you continue to do it, who inspires you to continue to do the work and the efforts that you're doing for our community?
So I always have to give praise to my foremother, Audre Lorde. I love her work. She was one of the first people who, for me, put together that the erotic is a source of power that has been intentionally taken away from us, and that it is very political and it's very spiritual, and it's very much a part of us reclaiming who we are. So I love Audre Lorde. But I will say that I am constantly just inspired, honestly, by Black people. Just all the stuff that we are given and have to deal with, and the fact that we get out of bed, I'm like, I don't know how we do it. And I'm just constantly thinking about what the people who are maybe 15 years younger than me, and what I wish I had when I was younger, and the people who are older than me, and the kind of sexuality that I hope to have when I'm older. So I'm really inspired by our community. I love the community that we have in person and on social media, people who are just so life-given and are just so down to have these conversations. And they keep me charged on days where I'm feeling down and I'm like, I don't even have the energy to talk about sex today. They just arrested another Black person or killed another Black person. It's the people who are the Black people who are constantly affirming, people of color, but particularly Black people who are constantly affirming how important this conversation is. That just keeps me really inspired and energized to keep doing this work.
And Rafaella, what about you?
You know what? I was going to say the exact same thing. Seriously, it's just such a special moment when you get that affirmation, because when you get in the work and you're doing all these things and you're learning so many things, and then you realize wait, everyone is still on chapter 1 or level 1 or whatever the case is. There's so much work to be done. And I think just to know that there's so many people who are ready to learn, who are ready to heal, who want to share this information with family members and friends. I mean, that to me is the bread and the butter. That's what I'm here for. So yeah, that's my inspiration, is to continue sharing this information and also educating myself, because I'm still learning not only about what's out there, but about myself as a living person, as a sexual being. And there's a lot of things that I want to improve on. And hopefully through my own journey, I'm better able to share that experience and educate others. So that's what's really exciting, is to know that it is truly a journey that we are inviting everyone on to join us on, and to really explore and uphold one another during this time.
And tell us, I know you do live classes, you do online coursework. What's next for Afrosexology? Rafaella, tell us what's on your horizon.
The most immediate thing that we're working on right now is streamlining our online presence so that we can reach out to more people. We have so many people who reach out and like, when you coming to New York, when you coming to Barbados, when you coming here and there, and we're like, dang, cost money to do all of that.
It
So
sure does.
we do have a huge presence in terms of like social media following and engagement, but we are thinking of other ways that we can bring our in-classroom experience to more people at their convenience, in their telephone or their laptop or whatever the case is. So definitely keep an eye out for us on that. We're thinking of how that's going to grow and what's going to make the most sense, because we want things to be really accessible for everyone. Again, this whole time we've been talking about like different socioeconomic levels and things that exist in our community. So we don't want to leave anyone out. It's going to be hard to do, but we want to make it as accessible as possible. And if we really want to be a Black liberated community, we're going to have to think a little bit bigger. So that's kind of what's on the radar. Well, one thing, can't give it all away.
Right.
You got to do a little Beyonce, drop it on you real quick. You just got to boom, 12 o'clock midnight in your face. So.
Right, boom, new course. Boom. Here you go.
New course. There you go.
Right.
You've been waiting, didn't even know.
Right. Dalychia, so tell the people what kind of courses you have now. So, let's take it back a step. If I wanted to be introduced to the work that you two are doing, what's the best place to start?
I will say start on our website, which is affrosexology.com. Then sign up for our newsletter while you're there. Then head over to, I would say, our Instagram, I would say our Twitter, and our Facebook. That's where you can find us on the web. But we do have a live stream that's coming up on Tuesday, I believe, where we will be, Tuesday at 7 p.m. Central Time. We will be working with O School, and we'll be doing a video, an online stream, so you can see us wherever you're at, from your laptop, from your phone, about creating your own erotic care plan, which is going to be centered on how to celebrate Masturbation Month, but just giving you some more fun ways to up your game or to start masturbating if you haven't yet. So that's going to be the next way to kind of experience us in like a class type of vibe.
Ooh, and would people be able to catch that on the replay somewhere? Because I think by the time they hear this, that episode would have happened. So, if
not on the replay yet, but we're working on getting that stuff for people so that you can watch our courses wherever.
Okay.
But just know when you hear it, we are on O School, so you can always just check it out and see not only us, but an amazing group of pleasure professionals who are doing work there. So just know that it's a thing and that we do workshops online there. So if they miss it, that's fine. We'll be up there again. Don't worry.
That's right. All right, ladies, thank you so much for chatting it up with me. I think we opened some eyes today. I know my eyes got a little bit wider based off of what we talked about, and I'm glad to now have masturbation as affirmation as a phrase that is in my vocabulary of thought. Before we go, you guys mentioned where they can find you, afrosexology.com. They can find you on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, just by searching Afrosexology?
Yes.
Okay, cool. And please do, because these ladies are doing amazing work. They have a course on twerking, which I thought was really dope, and oppression through orgasm, which I also thought was really dope. So definitely check them out. They're doing great things for our community. And as I mentioned in 2 episodes ago, it's about finding what you're great at and doing that for the community. And this is what these ladies are great at. And this is what they're doing for the community. This is how we get to a higher space as a whole, by everybody doing their part. And every part matters. So, again, Rafaella. I'll be trying to drop a little something on them. Dalychia, Rafaella, thank you so much for coming through. you're welcome to come back anytime, because we didn't even get into half of the things I wanted to talk about. But I think this is a good foundation for people to have that light come on in their head and start on their path of self-affirmation on their own, and however that rolls out. But like I said, thank you so much for coming on. You heard where you can find them. Of course, you can find me, your host, at Kent, KENT_ESQ on Instagram or Twitter. You can follow the podcast on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook at ungentrifiedpod. And of course, our website is ungentrifiedpodcast.com. If you have any comments that you want to send to Rafaella, Dalychia, or myself, you can email. That's ungentrified@kentwjohnson.com. And thank you for listening, and we'll check you guys soon. Talk to you later.
Bye.
Bye.